Good morning. How many of you, just by a show of hands, have ever heard the phrase, when the going gets tough, the tough get going? Some of you. All right. Most of you. How about this one? Winners never quit. Quitters never win. Anybody? Like 10 of you. Okay, there's more. Sorry. You know, I heard those things too, but what really confused me when I was growing up was when somebody would tell me this. Just quit while you're ahead. Does that make any sense? Seems to be the opposite, doesn't it? I mean, I'm still quitting. I mean, whether I'm quitting while I'm ahead or I'm quitting while I'm behind, I'm still quitting. And quitters never win and winners never quit. It just didn't make any sense to me. But the point is this. We all know someone who's a quitter. We all know someone who's quit something at one point or another in their lives or multiple points in their lives. We know that person. We just don't want to be that person, right? Now, one of the most difficult aspects of ministry for me is watching the average congregational member give up and throw in the towel when things get tough. And they head out. Not necessarily just walking out this door, but I'm talking about walking away from the church, Universal, walking away from God. They quit, they give up, they throw in the towel, and they hit the road. It's very, very discouraging. But don't let me fool you now. It doesn't happen only in the ranks of the congregation. It happens up here as well. It's an epidemic, almost, is what it seems like. You know, there's a book written, and the title is Your Pastor is an Endangered Species. Now, we can just agree at this moment, because we're all on the same page anyways, but let's just agree that the word pastor here is a cultural term for the minister, all right? So that we don't have somebody just checking out already, okay? This is what they say. They say, pastors dwell in a world of unfinished tyranny, where they can't shut the door, they can't walk out of the office, they can't know that something is completely finished because there's always another Bible study. There's always another sermon. There's always another phone call. There's always another committee meeting. There's always another hospital call. There's always another home visit. There's always another social gathering. There's always another person who wants the pastor's attention. And because of that, the pastor is on duty 27 hours a day, 39 days a month, 412 days a year. It just sounds a little bit silly. It sounds like that's a hyperbole, for sure, a serious exaggeration. But that's how it feels sometimes in ministry. And guys, you know it too because you do the same things. You get busy, things get crazy, and it feels like the day is gone. Then suddenly the week is gone, and before you know it, the whole year is gone. And you're looking back, what did you do? What did you accomplish? And you're reflecting. And it can be discouraging. And you can have those moments where you want to throw in the towel and you want to quit. Clergy Killers, another book. Actually, it's a book and a movie. But the book, the authors say this specifically, that in ministry, statistically, straight across the board, all ministers worldwide, doesn't matter what denomination it is, 50% of them will leave their ministry within 5 years. It's pretty sad. They also go on to say that 1,500 1,500 ministers will leave the church every single month. That's 18,000 men leaving the ministry every single year. Now, some of that is due to the clergy killers. Now, if you're not familiar with what a clergy killer is, let me just briefly tell you, because this isn't the message, but you need to know. A clergy killer is anyone who wants to destroy the minister, the minister's marriage, the minister's family, the minister's ministry, the church in general, any families in the within the congregation, any marriages within the congregation, anything they can do to destroy God's kingdom. That's it. That's what a clergy killer is, plain and simple. And you know what? They're in every congregation. Every single one, with no exception. And because of that, it's a scary thing, because we need to understand we can't quit. We can't just give up. We can't throw in the towel, right? It doesn't matter if we're ahead or behind. We don't quit, period. Now, it's important that you understand it as well, because you have a ministry. I know you think, you're looking at me and you say, well, you're the minister, and so you minister. Duh, it's in the title. But you guys have a ministry as well. When you were called by Christ, he gave you a commission. Make disciples. Not disciples of yourself. Disciples of Christ. Make disciples. Baptize them. Teach them everything that he's commanded you. We're called to be a royal priesthood. We are supposed to be ministers of reconciliation. And so therefore, your ministry is just as valuable as my ministry. And because of that, we need to understand we cannot quit. We can't throw in the towel. We can't give up. And in the text this morning, that's exactly what Peter has in mind. Now, it might not seem like it, especially from the title, Gone Fishing. And you heard the text this morning, Peter just simply says, I'm going fishing. But there's more depth to it. Pun intended, actually. He's going fishing. You need to understand a little bit what's going on, okay? So as the text opens up, here's where we're at. The disciples, along with Peter, they are in Galilee. That's where they're told to go. Jesus had said, make sure they go to Galilee and wait for me there. They're there. That's where they're at. They're in Galilee. They're doing this. They're looking at their watch. They're like, okay, what time is it? Yeah, 3 days. Yeah, I thought my watch was fast. No, they're waiting. Minutes turn into hours. Hours turn into a day. The day turns into several days. And at this point, Peter is getting frustrated. Peter, one out of perhaps many in there, he's getting frustrated. He's flustered. He's impatient. Where's Jesus at? What's the deal? And so he finally says, I'm going fishing. Now, don't hear me wrong. There's nothing wrong with going fishing. And some of you here, I know you probably love to go fishing. There's nothing wrong with that, okay? Don't go hit Facebook and be like, preacher said fishing's bad. I'm not saying that, okay? There's nothing inherently wrong with fishing in any way, all right? But what Peter's saying is so much deeper than just, I'm going to go fishing. And that's because the Greek rendering of this phrase, Peter literally says, I retire. That's what the Greek rendering is. I retire. He's like, I'm done. That's it. It's all over. Forget it. I'm throwing in the towel, walking away. I quit. It's all over. Nope. I'm done. He's not just going fishing. He doesn't know how to move forward in his faith. He's frustrated. He's confused, perhaps. Maybe he's just really super impatient. This is impetuous Peter. We love this guy for that. There's some qualities to that. But at this point, he's really saying, I don't know how to move forward in this ministry, so I'm going to do what I do know, and I know how to move backwards. And I can move back here, and I can go right back to my comfort zone, and I can just sit right here, and it's all good. And I'm going to go fishing. And actually, Peter was either a very, very persuasive speaker, or the disciples were feeling pretty much the same thing along with him, because he says, I'm going fishing, and they said, we'll go with you. We'll go with you. 7 out of the 11 are going fishing. 3 of those guys aren't even fishermen. We cannot quit. We can't. There's that tendency just to throw in the towel, walk away, and say, I'm done. I've had enough. But Jesus tells us in Luke 9:62, you put your hands to the plow, you can't look back. He says, anyone who puts the hands to the plow and looks back isn't fit for service in my kingdom. And what he's saying is when you put your hands to the plow and you start moving forward and you're plowing that field, you can't look behind you and watch where you're going. You're not going to make a straight line if you're constantly looking behind you. Your lines are going to go like this. You need to keep your focus in front of you, looking to where you're supposed to be heading, why you're supposed to be heading in that direction, not looking back. Now, don't get me wrong. It's not bad to look back occasionally. We even know that the Bible says that everything that was written in the past was written to teach us. So there's some value in that, but we can't do this. Can't do that. You can move ahead, look back a little bit, and there's good in reflecting back because we learn from our mistakes as well. So it's good to have. But seriously, you can't put your hands to the plow and consistently look back because Jesus makes it clear. You're not fit for service in my kingdom. You've taken this ministry, this is where you're at, and you go full speed ahead no matter what. And it doesn't matter what kind of speed bumps come along. You just keep going. You don't quit. You never quit. And so Peter, he says, you know what? I'm done. I'm wore out. I'm beat. I give up. Quit. I'm going fishing. It's all I know. I'm going fishing. So they jump in the boat They go out in the Sea of Galilee. They're there all night long. They didn't catch a single thing. Not even a minnow. They didn't even catch a cold. Nothing. They didn't catch a single thing the entire night. They're pros. This is what they do, right? This is what they do best, and yet they didn't catch a single solitary fish. And as they look up, they're heading in, the sun's coming up, and they look over the shoreline and they see there's somebody standing on the shore. Some stranger. They can't tell who it is exactly. They can only see a person. They can't see exactly who it is. But this person shouts out to him and says, "Hey, you guys catch any fish?" I can imagine their heads dropping where they're thinking, "Man, no, we didn't catch any." No. So they're like, "No, we didn't catch any fish." And the odd thing here is the stranger says, "Drop your nets on the right side of the boat." That's kind of odd, one. But even more than that is they did it, which is even more odd. Now, perhaps, 100 yards away, I have contact lenses, and with them I can see well. I'm still not a 20/20, but I can assure you that somebody with 20/20 vision looking 100 yards away and looking at somebody might be thinking, "I think I know that guy. But you're not 100% sure." And again, they're out here in the Sea of Galilee, right? There could be sunlight glistening off the water. It's reflecting. It's bright. It's difficult. Who in the world is this guy? And why would they just say, "Okay," and chuck their nets in the water? But they did. Maybe they're thinking, we did everything else, right? One last hoorah. Right? We did everything else. Just throw them in the water. If they catch fish on the way back in, they're heading in anyways. They catch fish, awesome. They got fish. If they don't, who cares? The empty nets are not going to slow down the boat. Not one bit. And so they chuck it in the water and they catch fish. They immediately start catching fish. Now this is the part I really love because John looks at Peter and he says, "It's the Lord." I love that. And I'm telling you, every time I'm working through the sermon, when I get to that part, I get chills, and I get chills again. I love that part. I love this part of the dialogue where John's like, "Hey, man, it's Jesus." He gets it. He totally makes that connection. Now he can't see them, but again, I imagine they could hear them quite easily. See, the Sea of Galilee is kind of like Phoenix. It's down in a valley. You got the mountains that surround it, and then the sea is down here. And to scream out something, I imagine it would carry much further than a mere 100 yards. So they could hear him quite well, but they couldn't see him. And John, maybe when they started catching fish, he's like, "Oh, it's the Lord." He gets it. Now maybe it's because this is where it all began. This is where Jesus sees them, and he's here with the crowd. Remember, I talked about this long ago, and the crowd's gathering in, and he's starting to back up. He's getting closer and closer to the water. There's only water behind him and a huge crowd in front of him, and they're squeezing in on every side. And he looks at Peter, and he says, "Let me use your boat." And so he gets in Peter's boat, and he scoots out just a little ways in the water, and he sits down to teach the crowd so that there's some distance there. They can see him. And he teaches the crowd, and when he's done, he looks at Peter, and he says, "Hey, let's go out to the deep water. Let's put down the nets for a catch." And remember Peter? Peter says, "Master, we were out all night long. We didn't catch a single thing. But if you say so, we'll do it." And so they do. They head out to deep water. They cast the nets out there, and they start catching fish. In fact, they're catching so many fish, the nets were breaking. They're pulling them into the boat. The boat is starting to sink, and they start to panic. They call their friends to bring another boat. That boat comes out. Now you got two boats that are starting to sink because there's so many fish. Remember that was that moment. And I wonder if John is having just an instant flashback to that moment. He says, "It's the Lord." And then Peter, I love him, impetuous Peter. He doesn't miss a beat. He jumps in the water and he swims all the way there. You gotta love the guy. You gotta. My goodness. He's like, he doesn't even say pull the nets in. He's just like, I'm in. I'm gone. Swims to the shoreline. The boat's coming up behind him, but still, Peter, he's swimming the whole way. And I can just kind of see him. I can kind of picture him as he, he kind of climbs up out of the water, and he's like all dripping wet and super soggy and weighs about 40 pounds extra, right? He's like maybe clearing the water out of his eyes and getting the hair off his face, and so he can focus clearly on Jesus, right? But there's no dialogue at all. There's nothing in the text that tells us what happened, just that the disciples came to the shoreline and Jesus made them breakfast. He cooked fish. I think it's funny. I don't think they were laughing at that, though. They're fishermen. They're out there catching fish. They can't catch any fish. Jesus is a carpenter. I got some fish. Right here. There's fresh fish even. But he makes them breakfast. And then after breakfast, Jesus wants to talk to Peter. He wants to talk to him alone. He's like, come here. I can kind of see him like putting his arm around him, Kind of the opposite from when they first started. Remember when you go way back to where it began, when Jesus called them, I can see all the fish in the boat, and Peter's looking at Jesus thinking, yeah, you and me, buddy. And Jesus putting his arm around Jesus, or Peter putting his arm around Jesus. You and me. Let's go over to Starbucks. I'm going to buy you coffee. We're going to talk about, I got all the boats. You got the power to catch fish. We're going to do this, right? It's kind of the opposite at this point, where now Jesus is saying, come on, Peter. Let's go over here. I want to talk to you. And they go over a little ways away, so they're all secluded, and it's just them. And I love it, because Jesus just wants to know, Peter, do you love me? There's no big conversation that's recorded here. It's quite simple. Peter, do you love me? And he says, yeah. And he will ask him 3 times, Peter, do you love me? 3 times he says yes. I love this part too, because not long before, or I shouldn't say, not too long before this event, Peter denied Christ 3 times. 3 times with an emphatic, no, I don't know that guy. Nope, not me. Never seen him before in my life. No. Denies him 3 times. Now he has this opportunity to affirm him 3 times. 3 times, do you love me, Peter? 3 times. Yes, you know I love you, Lord. Now here's the interesting thing too, is that the Greek word that Jesus is using for love is very specific. You see, in the Greek language, they have 5 words for love. 5. We have 1, love. You can say, I love tacos. Yeah. And I love Jesus. And we can say in the same sentence, and of course intellectually, we can distinguish between those levels of love. But I'm just saying, we have 1 word. Greek language, there are 5 words for love. Jesus is saying, do you love me, Peter? It's the word agape. It's this love for God. It's got to be above anything and everything. He's saying, Peter, do you love me more than you love those guys? Do you love me more than you love fishing? Do you love me more than your family? Do you love me more than anything or anyone in this entire world? And Peter says, you know I do. You know I do. Yes, Lord. And that affirmation is really Peter saying, I'm in. I'm in. We're good. I'm not leaving. Not walking away. I know it. I got the plan. It's all good. We're good to go. I'm not quitting. I'm not throwing in the towel. I'm moving forward. I'm pressing on. We need to do the same thing. My ministry, your ministry, it doesn't matter, because you know what? It's all his ministry. And it's tough. There are moments when you're going to feel tempted to throw in the towel and just walk away. But don't quit. Don't quit. You might be speaking to a neighbor, and he's just not getting it. Just not getting it. You're witnessing to him, and it feels like it's going nowhere. Well, sometimes your job is just to plant the seed. Someone else will water. So move on. If it's this neighbor, move to the neighbor next door. Start working with that neighbor. Start witnessing to that neighbor. Because you know what? Those 2 neighbors might get together and connect in a way that you can't do it. That person might be the one who waters that first guy. Same thing in the workplace. In fact, I even have a friend who shared an experience in the workplace. Couldn't get through to this guy no matter what. Didn't matter how he acted or what he said or just the way he encouraged. It didn't make a difference. This guy was just not coming around. And so he started noticing who that guy was spending time with in the workplace. So he thought, I'm not giving up. I'm not quitting. I just see the Lord is leading me into a ministry over here. So I'm going to take hold of this ministry while I'm still praying for that one. And he started working on that person, and it went round, and it went full circle. And all 3 of those guys now are best of friends. They love the Lord. They're serving God. Not because he gave up, but because he planted the seed. And he let somebody else water it. But he had to plant another seed so that seed whom he planted could go and water. You see what I'm saying here? I'm not trying to tell you, give up on your uncle or your cousin or whatever if it just seems like they're not getting it. I mean, I know that the Bible says don't cast pearls to swine. There has to be a point where you draw the line and say, okay, you can do this. That's okay. But you're not saying, I'm rejecting you. You're just stepping over to here. You planted the seed. Now allow somebody else to water that seed. Don't give up. See, Peter, the disciples, they're doing what they're supposed to do. They were told, go to Galilee. Wait for Jesus. He's resurrected. He's going to come and see you. Go there and wait. And so they do. They go there. And they're waiting, and they're waiting, and they're waiting some more. And Jesus doesn't seem to show up. So they keep waiting. Finally, Peter says, I'm done. I'm done. I quit. Maybe you know what that's like. Maybe again, it's a coworker or a neighbor. Maybe God has put you in a position to minister to someone, and you're feeling like you don't know how to move forward. You have no clue, and so you want to go fishing. You're ready to hit the road. I'm done. It's good. Throw it in the towel. I'm done. I'm moving on. Don't quit. Don't give up. Listen, Paul says this, 1 Corinthians 15:58. It's not on the screen. It's just a text for you guys. 1 Corinthians 15:58. He says, therefore, my dear brothers and sisters, stand firm. Let nothing move you. In fact, I'm going to read that again. Let nothing move you. Always give yourselves fully to the work of the Lord, because you know that your labor in the Lord is not in vain. So we don't know what God has in store for us today. We don't know what he has planned for us tomorrow or next week or next month or next year. But I can assure you this. There are some amazing blessings that he has planned. If you quit, you'll never get there. You'll never see them. You got to stand firm. Run the race. Press on towards the prize. Fight that good fight. Knowing that your labor for the Lord is not in vain. Don't throw in the towel. Don't give up, and never quit. Let's pray. Father, you are so awesome. You are so amazing.